Hello, my name is Dr. Dharm. I'm a naturopathy doctor here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And today I would like to share some ideas I have that I'm still exploring about the physical, emotional, and spiritual blocks or causes to health problems related to the pancreas, such as mostly in the insulin blood sugar aspect. I would like to share some of my own explorations since 2012 in this issue, and hopefully give you some clue on why, even though we physically understand what's going on with blood sugar and cortisol and insulin and all the causes and damages, we can't just switch it off and just do what we know is right, because we have to address other deeper, more powerful issues in order to heal it. So to start with, in 2012, I had gone to Paris with my daughter. And while I was there, I noticed that meal times, every time I ate, something was different. Something was different in Paris, especially around meals. Something was good, something was right, but what's happening? Why do I feel so different there? And then when I came back to Vancouver, I started to, read. That's my thing. And started to look into what people have written about Paris, about France and their culture. And there were a lot of books and ideas about why French people are generally able to stay pretty healthy and lean, skinny. So, and yet they eat very rich foods, like what's going on. So there was a lot of exploration in the physical aspect of it, such as it's what you eat, it's portion sizes, food combination, on and on and on, which wasn't enough for me. I felt like there's something more going on. So then I started to read books by French people themselves and translate it into English. And as I read it, I started to understand that there is a whole cultural value, which is always an emotion that get passed down generation by generation, around taking your time to receive, to savor, to let it in. So some ideas are beginning to, spin in my head. And then going forward, I started to research insulin as a hormone and what it does to the brain, to the body, and cortisol, how cortisol comes in. When cortisol is activated, then it will tell your cells to not let sugar in because you need it for your muscles and your heart. You need it for dealing with obstacles in life. So high cortisol over time will literally create insulin resistance. Even if you're fit and healthy and eat right, cortisol alone can do that. And I started looking into how sleep affects it, and there are a lot of chronic illnesses that get created by disturbed sleep. So I've been looking at that connection. And then I started to look at the insulin hormone itself and how inflammatory it is. But it also hits a certain part in your brain that gives you a certain high, just as cortisol does and just as blood sugar does, the sugar itself. Couldn't quite put it together, but I say, you know what? Maybe I should go keto. I felt great immediately, but I couldn't sustain it. And unfortunately, I also wasn't vegan at that time, so there were a lot of animals were harmed in the process. I feel terrible about it now, looking back. But I couldn't sustain it, even though I felt better. And I didn't understand why at that time. And then come along 2014, by this time I'd gone back to France the second time and looked at how the culture was being lived out through how food was presented and cooked, and the environment and the permission that France create for you to take your time and receive. So I'm kind of putting all these ideas together. 2014, I discovered Divine Truth. And in Divine Truth, there's a concept called addictions, emotional addictions, not just physical addictions. So I'm humming along, trying to work out what addictions are about and why they're so damaging, and trying to work through some of the addictions. And then in 2018, I did some what I call channeling work, because I have a passion for feeling into, say, an organ system, an organ, and then trying to feel into the physical aspects and the emotional aspects and the spiritual aspects. And when I did pancreas, what I felt from pancreas was that the pancreas is trying to help us to see the sweetness of life, to see it, to feel it, and to feel that you're enough. You did enough. You worked hard. That was the end of your day. It's done. It was good. You are enough. These are the emotions that nurture and nourish pancreas. So then the addiction that damages pancreas started to come into play. But now we're in 2022, and I started having some medical issues in these past few months, and I love those. I have so many medical issues. I'm like a living lab. Get to see all these emotions, deny emotions, addictions, and on, and then started to see how my health will then start to improve. So my body had gone into ketosis by itself because I'm starving. My cells said, no more insulin, no more sugar. In the meantime, fortunately, I'm also connecting to the addiction that was driving it. So I'll explain what that is in a minute. And so fortunately, I say, you know what, it's time to go vegan keto. My body's doing it anyway. And I have to say, it's easy. It's easy, it's delicious, it's enjoyable. It can be done, seriously. So now I'm putting together the perspective of addictions. So as I'm challenging the addictions that I need to succeed, I need to accomplish, I need to work hard, I need to push myself, all of these A-type personalities that we kind of enable in North America, in Western countries. These are about pushing yourself, which is the cortisol coming in to push and push and push, and will burn out the pancreas because you will never feel it was enough. I did great. It's an addiction. It's never satisfied. It's just going to keep going. And sometimes, fortunately, law of attraction will also give you failure to trigger the suppressed emotion. And so, what I've come to is that instead of manufacturing the feeling of I am enough and I'm good, I have permission, I'll probably just end up creating other addictions or other facades. I decided that I need to get rid of the addiction itself because it's still pushing my body. That's the piece I need to feel into and release. And then as I did that, I'm beginning to feel some sadness that my life has been disappointing. I worked hard, never got what I wanted. So that's the sadness of the addiction being let go. And as you do that, because you're giving up the addiction, fear will get triggered. I'll show you how you can access these resources. So I literally physically shake in fear to release it. And as I did that, I started to get childhood memories of being told very emotionally, like projected at, that I'll never amount to anything. I was a waste of a birth. I should have died. I'll never accomplish anything. And as a child, I wasn't allowed to process those very painful emotions. So in order to suppress emotion, you got to create addictions. And the addictions I created were to compensate for the feelings. So I've been pushing myself so that I can feel that I have worth and that I've earned the right to be born and that I was enough. But addictions by themselves, by their very nature, only causes damage and pain. You may get temporary successful appearing outcomes, but there's always a price. So now that I'm connecting to the childhood causes, I can start to let those feelings come out about being made to feel that I'm worthless, I'll never amount to anything, I'm a failure, I shouldn't have been born, by letting myself release those sadness, which that in itself is probably going to take me a good year if I'm lucky. That's fast for me. I think it takes a lot of time for me to slowly work through emotions. And then as I do that, what I expect to happen is my innate sense of worth will start to come up, will start to awaken, and I will connect to how God feels about me, about my worth, and that I am enough, and that I was created perfect with beautiful gifts, which fortunately I've connected to some aspect of my nature. And I've noticed that when I'm coming from that part of my soul that's expressing my true self, the expression in itself is a reward. So I'm beginning to feel the contrast that I don't feel like I'm pushing myself. I don't need an outcome. I'm already feeling internally rewarded. There's a flow, there's endless energy. I feel happy at the end of it. So I have, fortunately, a contrast to see the difference between the pushing myself with all that cortisol being jacked up and coming from my real self, that I was always enough. I already have beautiful gifts that as I express and share them, in itself, its own fulfillment. And as I go into that, I can imagine, I can see how biochemically, it's noon here in Vancouver, that biochemically I will start to savor and receive the goodness of life and let it in. And that will start to heal the pancreas. So these are some of my ideas. I laid out a lot of new ideas here today. I would like to share where you can get the resources to understand more deeply. So one beautiful place to go to is a minute here. I can't find the space. Well, I was going to show how to get to divinetruth.com website, and surprisingly, I can't. But let me try again. And there it is. Okay. So if you go to divinetruth.com and you go to downloads, go to the year. I generally like the earlier year stuff at this point. And if you go to this August 22nd, 2010, Emotion and Addiction, you can choose to watch the YouTube or listen to the lecture or read the transcript of the lecture. That's a lot of beautiful work here by Mary and Jesus that give just, I'll stop talking. Have your own experience. And then one of my passion is to apply material and then try to see what that looks like. So a few friends of mine and myself, we did the addiction series. So if you go to YouTube and I guess search Dharm Sidhu, you will come to playlist and then you will see down here addiction series. And there were, I think, 9 series of videos on breaking down what addiction is, why we block to it, how do you work through it. And then I also pick an addiction brand new addiction to work through during the videos. That would also give you some ideas on what I mean by addictions. And that just a quick summary of how blood sugar regulation, insulin and pancreas and cortisol can be driven by addictions and how it creates physical damage, but that unless you address the emotional addiction cause for it, you won't get too far with fully healing the organ system. Thank you for listening to me, and I will continue to share other videos on health and organ system as I explore it. Thank you.